You never really think it's going to happen to you. You hear stories, on the news, from friends and movies, but deep down you always think there's time. Time to say the things you meant to say. Time to fix old wounds. Time to laugh together. One more time. I thought I had time, until the night I almost lost my dad. It started like any other day. He was up early, watering the garden like he always did, coffee in one hand, radio playing some old jazz in the background. I remember walking past him, mumbling something about work, barely making eye contact. He smiled and said, "Don't work too hard," like he always did. I barely responded. I wish I'd stopped and said more. I wish I'd sat with him, even for 5 minutes. Later that afternoon, I got the call. My mom's voice was shaking. "It's your father," she said. "He collapsed. The ambulance is on the way." I don't remember the drive to the hospital. All I remember is the fear. That cold, deep fear that settles into your chest and won't let you breathe. My mind raced with memories and regrets. Had I told him I loved him recently? Had I ever said thank you for everything he did for me growing up? When I got to the hospital, they had already taken him in. A heart attack, the nurse said. A big one. They had managed to revive him, but he hadn't regained consciousness. And he might not. The words felt sharp, like they were cutting into me. They let me see him a few hours later. He looked nothing, like the man I saw that morning. Tubes in his mouth, machines beeping beside him, his skin pale and his body still. I remember reaching for his hand. It felt so cold, so still. I held it like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Stayed in that room for 3 days. I barely ate. I didn't sleep. I just sat beside him reading old stories, playing music he loved, talking to him like he was just resting. I kept hoping that if I just said the right thing, if I just kept believing hard enough, he'd come back to me. But he didn't move. Not once. The doctors did their tests. They showed us scans, talked about brain activity, oxygen levels, heart rates. Most of it didn't even register. All I knew was that the man who raised me, who held my hand on my first day of school, who showed me how to ride a bike and how to be a man, he was slipping away, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Then came the night. The worst night of my life. The doctor came in, his face serious, his voice low. He looked at me the way people do when they're about to break your heart. "I'm very sorry," he said. "We've done all we can. There's no response, no signs of brain activity. It's time to let go." I remember staring at him, unable to process the words. Let go? How do you let go of your father? How do you look at the man who raised you, protected you, sacrificed everything for you, and say goodbye? I didn't say anything. I just shook my head. Tears were already falling. My throat was tight and my hands were shaking. Then a nurse stepped forward. She was young, with kind eyes and a soft presence. I hadn't seen her before, and I barely noticed her until she moved closer to the bed. She didn't ask for permission. She just leaned over, gently placed her hand on my father's shoulder, and whispered something into his ear. I couldn't hear what she said. It was barely a breath. Then, just as the doctor turned to note the time of death, my dad moved. It was tiny, a flicker, a twitch of his finger against mine. "Wait," I said, my voice breaking. He moved. The doctor turned around. "It could be a reflex," he said, but he was already walking back to the bed. Then my dad did it again, stronger this time. He squeezed my hand. The room changed in an instant. The machines were beeping differently. The doctor was calling for more staff. They were checking his pupils, his heartbeat, his breathing. And slowly, my dad began to come back. His eyes opened, just a sliver at first. But they opened. I collapsed onto his chest, crying like a child. I kept saying, "You're back, you're back, thank you." The nurse stood quietly to the side, tears in her eyes, too. After things calmed down, I found her in the hallway and asked her what she said. I had to know. She looked at me with that same soft expression and said, "I told him his son was still here, that someone still needed him." Sometimes the heart listens, even when the body's ready to give up. Sometimes people just need to be reminded they're loved. I'll never forget those words. My dad spent months in recovery. It wasn't easy. The damage to his heart had taken a toll on his whole body. At first, he could barely sit up in bed, without getting dizzy. His hands shook when he tried to hold a spoon. Just walking from the bed to the bathroom was like climbing a mountain. There were days when he was frustrated, angry even. Angry at his body for betraying him, at life for hitting him so hard, so suddenly. And I'll be honest, there were moments I had to step out of the room just to cry. Watching the strongest man I've ever known struggle to lift his own cup of water broke something in me. But my dad is a fighter. Always has been. Every small victory felt like a miracle. The first time he walked without help. The first time he laughed again. Really laughed. The first time he told me he loved me since waking up. It all meant more than I could ever put into words. We started having deeper conversations, real ones. Not just about the weather or what's on TV, but about life, memories, regrets, love. He told me stories from his childhood that I'd never heard before. About the first time he fell in love, how scared he was when I was born, how hard he worked to give me a better life than he had. And I listened, truly listened, because I knew now how close I came to never hearing those stories at all. We laugh, more now too. Real, belly-deep laughter, sometimes over old jokes, sometimes over nothing at all. But there's something different in the way we laugh now, like we both know how precious each moment is. Like we're aware every time that this wasn't guaranteed, and saying, "I love you," it used to be once in a while. Now we say it like it's part of breathing, at the end of every phone call, before we say goodbye, even mid-conversation, sometimes. Just because we've learned the hard way that there might not always be another chance. Sometimes, when I visit him, I sit beside him like I did that night in the hospital, and I take his hand in mine. Not because he needs help walking anymore, but because I need the reminder. The feeling of his hand in mine reminds me how close I came to losing him. How fragile everything really is. And every single time, without fail, that night flashes back in my mind. The cold room, the machines, the sound of the doctor's voice saying it was time to let go. And then, the whisper, that one quiet, gentle whisper from a nurse who refused to give up. I don't know what power was in those words. I don't even know if my dad remembers hearing them. But I do know this. That whisper didn't just wake him up. It woke us up. It reminded me that love can reach people even when science says it's over. That connection, faith, and presence, just being there, can change everything. And every day since then has felt like borrowed time. A second chance. A second chance to love better, listen deeper, and never take a moment for granted. All because of one whisper. That changed everything.